Hi, everybody. I'm Louisa Spring, and I'm joined here today with an amazing bunch of VR and AR gaming people. And I just wanted to say it's so great. Us women, basically, all women, we men. Obviously, esports is, a rapidly changing landscape, and Goldman Sachs is predicting nearly 300 million viewers by 2022 for regular esports, and obviously if we can even get a slither of that for VR and AR esports, which is also on the rise, it would be great. So first of all, I would love to introduce all of the panel and find out exactly how their company plays a role in the VR, AR ecosystem. So Angelo.
Hi everyone, my name is Angelo Del Priore. I'm a partner at HP Tech Ventures. We're the venture capital arm of HP. Our job is to look for startup companies for HP to invest in and or partner with from anywhere around the world. I focus on VR, AR, gaming education, so it's actually a nice and great confluence. And we have already done a couple of things, obviously with the Omen backpack, and we're going to be doing more things, and we came out with a Reverb headset, and we actually have a VR business unit. So this is an area that is of primary interest to HP. We have, probably everyone here knows, Joanna Popper running our LBE focus area. We've got a couple of other focus areas, but it's an area that HP at the highest levels has committed to. Small steps in terms of hardware. We've done sponsorships that we've announced with Virtuix and Val, the Virtual Athletics League. And we're going to be doing more things, and I spend a lot of time in the VR and gaming space, and I'm just going to keep spending more time looking for companies.
Hi, my name is Janelle Summers. I am the VP of Creative Development at VRstudios. VRstudios is actually one of the leading providers of large-scale, commercial-grade, wireless, free-roaming, multiplayer VR for LBE, location-based entertainment businesses. We work with companies such as Dave & Buster's, Cineplex, Universal Studios, Knott's Berry Farm, Cedar Fair Entertainment, Hershend Entertainment, and many others. We were actually the first to produce and commercialize fully wireless multiplayer VR systems. And everything we do is runs on our VRcade attraction management platform. And that actually, if you're familiar with all these simulators in the Dave & Buster's stores, our attraction management platform, or AMP, runs and manages all those simulators. One of our big brand-cutting strategic properties is called VRcade PowerPlay. And this is actually something that's even beyond esports. It is the first true sport in VR. It melds actually athletic and competitive sports with VR to create a relatable but a very unique concept. And in fact, I have a video here to show you quickly. It's an on-site attract video for VRcade PowerPlay. So if you could please roll that. Thanks so much.
Hi everyone, my name is Lisa Watts. I am the founder of a brand new startup called 121 Immersive. I am a 12-week recovering Intel employee, where I spent 25 amazing years, actually one of the most innovative companies in the world, and had the opportunity while in the last few years there to lead the storytelling and the and the messaging and marketing around the immersive space, and really best job on the planet, and now I'm continuing that work as an independent. One of the things that I had the opportunity to do while I was there was actually work with Oculus and ESL to start the VR Challenger League, which is now grown up to be the VR League. So in that first season, I got to work hands-on as a one-man or one-woman army from inside of Intel, working with those two great teams to pull off and produce the first ever international world finals, playing Unspoken and Echo Arena. Thank you. It's been a long week already. You know, to my right, Sonya is going to talk about her experiences being on one of those first teams. So in my new company, I'm looking to work with companies that are and partners who are wanting to break into the various spaces of VR for a reason, and both executive producing and advising, and just happy to be here on this all-star panel this morning. Thank you.
Good morning, guys. I am Sonya Haskins, and I am here with VRespawn. We're the only news agency dedicated exclusively to covering VR esports. I write freelance for several other places, including VR Fitness Insider and the VR League through ESL and Oculus. And so basically, my story is that I had never gamed before 2017, and I tried a headset on, fell in love with it, started playing, and began playing Echo Arena. And then became a competitive player, made it to nationals because I'm pretty good at that game. And so then I really just loved the people there, and so I decided that I could have kept playing competitively, but instead of doing that, as a journalist by trade, I thought that there needed to be more information out there about how awesome this field was. And so basically I started writing articles and trying to promote the VR esports industry overall. So that's really what I do now, and I began helping to just collaborate and promote the various leagues, VR Master League and the Virtual Athletics League and the Collegiate League, which is Collegiate VR Esports League. And so, because all these things tie together, and so basically that's what I do. And if you're interested or have any information about leagues or would like to grow, then I might be the person for you to talk to. So it's nice to be here today. Thank you.
Yeah, and Sonya, you're also known as the mother of all teams.
Yes, I try not to put that out there too much because people then come and ask me questions and expect me to be their mother, but, but thank you. Yes, I'm happy to help if you need any information at all. I have 5 children. I've had about 100 foster kids, so I do tend to do the mothering thing a bit much.
Suppose I should introduce myself. I am Oliver Kibblewhite. I am the ambiguously titled Head of Special Projects at a AR, VR, MR, any of the Rs at this point, production studio called Rewind. We've been making VR, AR content for probably getting on for 5 or 6 years now. During my time at the company, we've grown from 4 people to just under 60 now, which is terrifying. But it's been an interesting journey. My background is in network engineering. I started off at the age of 15 as a LAN party network technician, working for multiplayer in the Insomnia series in the UK. But ever since then, I've been working with Rewind basically to help get things across the line that might be a little bit challenging. When we started doing VR, that was all the VR because nobody knew how to run it. You couldn't just send a build to someone and expect them to be able to set up their headset, install it, make it work. Now it's a little bit more standardized, so I don't get involved in sort of day-to-day commercial production of VR stuff anymore. I get the, hey, so we want to put a headset in the back of a car and drive it. And it's like, that's a whole raft of problems. But it means that I get to play with the toys, basically. Best job in the world.
Great. So actually, I want to come back to you, Oliver, because obviously Rewind are involved with ESL and the Audience of the Future grant, which I believe was about £4 million to prove out technology within esports. And obviously, I know there's some things you probably can't tell us, but the rest of it is public information. So I would just like you to share, though, what you can tell us today about the project you're doing with ESL.
So Rewind is part of a consortium of companies called Weaver. And our mission at the moment is to bring second and third screen content to traditional esports. We're actually running it live in Birmingham at the ESL1 tournament right now. So afterwards, if you want to see what our app looks like, I can show you and dial into a live Dota 2 match. We take stats and information that would be available for a traditional sport. For instance, if you watch Formula 1 on TV, you've got a lap tracker, you've got timing screens, you've got the ability to work out the stats of how people have been performing throughout the course of the race, rather than just focusing on the front 3 cars, which is traditionally what happens with TV coverage. The same is true of esports. Like, there's a single camera view, really, that's driven by someone, and they decide the narrative that you get to see. With the Weaver platform, we're going to take a lot of the control back and use a whole raft of machine learning technology to give a good idea about where something interesting might happen in the future and drive virtual cameras to those positions in real time. And also feed information into the commentators as well to help level up their availability of information to give better commentary on what's going on. I think I can say all that because it's live now.
Yeah, that was really exciting, actually, to see that the government in the UK are supporting ventures like that. So, Angelo, I want to talk to you about the Virtual Athletic League. Can you tell me how you're helping them and what you're doing with them and what it is exactly?
Sure. So Virtual Athletic League is a 168, I forget the number of arcades now, that basically have a organized VR esports leagues that happen on a monthly basis or more often. They've got, I think, 7 titles. And it actually started out of I don't want to say random, but like it's random that anyone could have kind of done this. The field is so open. Out of Salt Lake City, Nevada, right? And it's just someone was running an LVE, said, hey, this is a good idea. And they just kind of took it and ran with it. And now it's this, amazing league, right? And, I hope it's going to keep, I hope it's going to be 250, arcades. And actually the arcades are from all over the world, right? It's not just like it's in the Southwest US, right? It's extremely exciting because it's happening all over the place. And HP and the HP Omen Brands is a sponsor of the league, right? So that's kind of helps people because now, you can say to your kid, you can become an esports professional, right? Because there is a purse out there for you.
Right. Talking of money, how much?
How much? You ask me this every panel.
50K.
50K.
It's 50K.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
Yes. So they have a shot at winning 50K, which is actually very good. So also, I would like to learn from you, Lisa, about producing live VR esports tournaments. So I was there actually when you did the Oculus one on stage, and I kind of want to learn about, any tricks of the trade for producing live esports tournaments, or any lighting and production, broadcast, that kind of thing. And what are the kinds of budgets that you see for producing a live tournament on stage? And by the way, we should do one here next year.
That sounds great. To be perfectly honest, a lot of that effort was actually taken on by Facebook, and Chris McKelvey and his team actually did a fantastic job. I think one of the things that has to be a consideration is actually the amount, especially for VR in particular, is the amount of potential RF interference is still an issue for us. So technically speaking, those things have to be taken into consideration. And this is why, in a lot of cases, doing studio matches for finals is still kind of a thing when it comes to some of the technological issues that we have. But in that particular tournament, we kind of had the perfect storm as far as the title and the ability to have a large enough space on a main stage that we really wanted to set the tone for what was going forward. And it was really a culmination of making sure that we really had great shoutcasters that really actually understood the game from the inside. I think it's a little hit or miss right now in some of the tournaments that we see on whether or not we are really truly using a true sportscaster or a shoutcaster that really understands what's going on, and whether we're trying to use people that are there's a tug of war between what you can get from a marketing perspective when you're a sponsor and how that goes out to the marketplace, and versus really truly taking care of the fan experience. So it's great to see the things like Weaver are doing. I think those are going to be really, really critical moving forward. But also making sure that you're having those wide shots of the players themselves, because this is very, very different than your traditional flat gaming, where so much of the action is really on screen. You've got those dramatic win moments or the defeat moments where the players are then cut into the view, but most of it is really about the 2D viewing. In VR, the challenge is being able to do that superimposition of the physical player and the match itself, cutting back and forth, helping people follow along, because players are swiveling every which direction, jumping every which direction. This really makes for a very exciting match, but it makes for a lot of challenges on the production side. So I think we've got to get more expertise in VR esports, filming for the audience, and hopefully over time we'll get more expertise from actual physical sports, soccer, football, basketball. These guys really know what they're doing as far as capturing the action, and I think VR esports is something that, as we get better experience over time, is going to go a little bit more that direction than what we've seen in flat gaming.
Yeah, actually, Oliver, I mean, how did you prepare for the ESL one? Because I actually was there last year. I mean, it is a massive, massive show at the arena. So I was just actually curious how you prepared to do that broadcast-wise.
So thankfully, because we're dealing primarily with stats and positional information from the game rather than a traditional video feed, we pair up with the live Twitch stream, so they handle the heavy lifting for shifting data around. And because we've been building this off a library of replay data for machine learning purposes, it also means that we can then play out those matches to test our servers and our content backend. But when it comes to actually delivering it live, when the tournament started, I think Wednesday was pre-matches, I think, we turned it on and it worked, which is fantastic. Like,
Which is the reason you're here.
Exactly, and not there.
Right.
People say never do a live demo, but sometimes you do actually have to do the thing for real. And we've been working on this for about 6 months now, so it's great to be able to finally take it to the public and get their response, because everything we've done has been kind of a closed environment up until now. Just briefly on the sort of the mixed reality production, we've done a whole bunch of sort of Magic Leap work, which is a challenge because it's hard to get hold of a lot of headsets, and when you have an audience of 700 people, you need to bring mixed reality cameras into it. I think there's going to be a lot of improvement in the next couple of years, having been to NAB this year, about live compositing hardware, which is not super expensive, and in the sort of visual effects realm, more sort of accessible for smaller commercial productions. My background's actually theatre engineering as well, so there's a whole raft of traditional event production stuff, which I'm keen to see move into the immersive technology space. We did a car launch with Jaguar a couple of years ago, where we had a very traditional show caller. She had a book, she had a script, she had her video monitor of the stage, and a video monitor of the VR environment, which meant that all of the skills and learnings that traditional production has could be ported to the digital environment as well, which is what you want. There's no point in kind of chucking the book out and starting again. These people, theatre practitioners, have the learnings. They know how to do this. It's not new. Like we say, this is a brave new world and everything's going to change. It's like, no, still the same stuff applies. You still got to frame a shot and make sure the person's standing in the right place for your cue. Like it's basic production.
And one other point that I didn't really answer from your original question. I'm probably not going to go into the cost piece, but one of the things is, and you get what you pay for. That's what I'll say on that.
Right.
But I think one of the key things, and Sonya and I have talked about this ad nauseum. I know Janelle totally agrees with this as well, which is we need the game developers to start thinking about spectator modes as a legitimate thing as part of their game.
Yeah, absolutely.
One of the things that I was talking on Aqua Arena would have been great was like if I would love to be in the stands in Avatar or whatever, next to Janelle who's wherever and Sonya who's wherever, and we're high-fiving and like being able to be the peanut gallery, but actually truly inside of VR. I mean, this is the extended audience aspect of it, where I can't necessarily go to be in the arena, but I can do the next best thing, or sometimes even the better thing, and actually physically be there. And even for the players to have a cheering crowd, maybe that's distracting, or maybe it's not. Maybe that becomes part of the game aspect, or maybe the audience is, they can talk to each other, but the players don't get distracted. Those are all things that we've got to play with and look at. But this is such an opportunity for presence in VR, that from a fan perspective, why are we just stuck on the Discord channel? Why can't we be there, quote unquote, live and in person as well, like I could at a basketball game, to kind of do the tradition?
Well, and part of it is because VR is so different. I mean, we do that in the game. Like, we can go in the game with each other, and we're there. I know this sounds crazy, but we're there physically together. Like, when I'm in VR, it's really kind of no different than this. Like, I think of myself as in the environment. I'm just in a different place. And so when we play those games together, like, as opposed to traditional gaming, flat gaming, you're watching it, but with VR, we're actually in that environment. And so we're used to spectating each other already from that sense. Like, if we go to a basketball court, we're playing together. You may be off to the side watching, but you're still in that environment. So in VR, we do the same thing. And some of the games already have a spectator mode where you can be watching them. You can still be you can be courtside and still be watching, or you can play the game and we're still immersed in it. But that's where we're going to have to go eventually, is where the actual audience of these big events can stick on their headset and they can be just like you guys are, where we're here playing the game or whatever, and you're watching that. So eventually it just has to happen. I mean, I think it will. That's not even a question.
Are there any out there that you like right now that cater to your spectator mode, or are the ones that you would like to see cater to your spectator mode?
As far as specific titles, you mean?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Echo Arena is probably,
Yeah,
probably
I mean,
one
they're
of the
already
most exciting out there, and I know that Dr. Rue about that, and I know they're working on. They have a spectator mode already, whether there's stands inside the game. That's, we hope they,
Eventually, that's what our hope is. They'll have the outside of the arena where we can actually look down into the arena. But there are some of the other games that we've been working with that are for the leagues that are definitely creating some spectator modes. And there's one that I think is going to be released at E3. I'm not positive about that, but they have a really cool spectator mode. And so I'm excited to see that. But there are just a lot of things happening right now, and we may learn some more about those things next week as well.
yeah.
So, Janelle, I wanted to talk about like games in arcades as well, and VR esports tournaments within arcades. Kind of, can you talk about the game design for an esports game in an arcade?
Yeah, and actually, let me use the arcade power play as an example, because again, this is different. This is even beyond sort of traditional esports and beyond traditional VR esports. So what you didn't see in that Attract video is our player zero, our spectator mode screen. And typically in our spectator mode screen, you've got the virtual play. There's a web camera, so you see also the physical play. You also see the shoutcaster as well, and there can be other things partitioned in that screen too. And so just to kind of really emphasize about the arcade power play, so this is, you are actually playing a sport in an arena. You are running, this is one-to-one. So everything that you would do naturally, physically, you're doing this in VR. So people are wearing backpack computers, and they are just going at it. It's player versus player. It's a team-based sport, in this sort of futuristic stadium. So this is very, very physical. It's very athletic. People come out sweating. You are playing an actual sport in VR. So,
sounds exhausting.
So we've got folks who are like doing upselling towels and water bottles after that. So this is a really, really different kind of thing. And this is sort of, in a way, an evolution of like dodgeball and laser tag, but in VR. But we have, so these matches get shoutcasted, and it's huge spectator. People love watching the folks running around. So we are testing an arena system at Dave & Buster's Tampa store right now. And constantly what we're hearing is that there are crowds just to watch it. People are like, buying beers, and they're just like watching the physical players running around, and it's marvelous. But also built into the game, we have a dynamic audience as well. So within the futuristic stadium they're playing, as part of the theme of being in the futuristic stadium, they have this dynamic crowd that responds appropriately to what the players are doing in the game, too.
Dynamic in terms of users or AI driven?
AI driven.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's super interesting. I actually just did a tournament with the British Army, actually, using Focus. And actually, it was completely untethered, just using the Focus. And it went really well, actually. I was surprised. And we had, you know, queues around the block for it. So people are really getting into it now and kind of understanding what VR is versus it being something that they're scared of putting on their face.
Yeah, well, we've had, we've had people from Microsoft come over and say this is the first time they felt comfortable running in VR. I mean, they get into it, they get lost, they become super immersed in this futuristic stadium, and they just go for it, and it's fantastic.
Yeah, I've actually been up to see Janelle's place in Seattle, and it is one of the best, as I say, out there. So I would encourage everyone to go and have a look. So how have you marketed a tournament? So Sonya, you know, obviously you're very involved in this. How much do you use? Discord, Twitch? I mean, what are you using to get the word out there? Apart from your own channel.
Yeah, I use any means possible. So if that means writing articles for VRespawn, writing articles for other places, and I try to tailor it in such a way that it can go to different places. So like, for example, VR Fitness Insider is a health and fitness kind of blog or website. And so VR Esports has a lot to do with health and fitness. So I might write an article about the tournament or the players in regards to the fact that you need to stay hydrated, because people forget when you're on a team, like the first season that I played VR League, I actually lost 40 pounds in 6 months just playing Echo Arena. Because it's amazingly physical. I mean, people don't realize that if you haven't actually played a competitive VR esport, it's not just like going in VR and having an experience or a regular game. You are literally playing a competitive sport at a pro level for hours a day because you have to practice and prepare. And so I might market it through trying to get the word out about players like that, or stories that are important. You know, you have to stretch before you play. You can't just go into a VR esport cold. You have to warm your muscles up or you're going to get injured, which we have. The first summer I played, I actually tore my rotator cuff, because when in Echo Arena, for example, you throw a disc, and when you're doing that at a pro level, you do that repeatedly for hours a day, and so I pulled that muscle. And so that's one thing I do, and then the other things are just making sure right now what my focus is getting the stories out about actual players and teams and developers and the leagues. I mean, because one thing I love about VR is I really like the technology, even though I was never into technology before, but you still have what I call the human behind the headset. There's always a story, and so I try to find the stories of the people that are involved, whether it be, you know, the story of how this company grew up or how this developer came up with this idea for the game. And like, for example, the finals we're having next week, I'm headed to London actually tomorrow for the VR League World Finals, and one of the players is in a wheelchair. And so, you know, that's very interesting. Like, how did he come to play this game? And he wouldn't be able to play a traditional, like a traditional game like basketball with the traditional players, but in VR, it's irrelevant. It doesn't matter. I mean, I'm an old woman, and I could get out there and stomp some butt from these young guys, because VR kind of levels the playing field a bit. And so if you work hard and practice, you can rise to that same level if you're good at it. So that's one way, and yes, I definitely use Discord. We promote through, you know, Twitter and Facebook, any way we can to get the word out about leagues and players. But personally, I just like sharing the stories and just letting people know that people who do this are passionate about it. They work hard to do it. The players, you know, work their tails off practicing. The developers work so hard to make the games better. And the games that are successful are the developers who are very involved with the communities. And so it's all, the ecosystem has to work together and just make sure that everybody's doing their part to make it the best possible from the beginning. We're just starting this. It's an amazing thing that we're here building this industry from the ground up. And so if we do that properly from the beginning, Lisa and I were talking about yesterday, if we start here and start building a positive foundation for everybody involved, it'll be better for all of us 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now when it's going to be huge.
Yeah, I just have one more question actually about like the team building. How do you find players for the teams? How did they find you? I mean, you know, let us in on all of that.
So basically the games can develop Discord channels or servers. They may have a following through that. And then we, of course, have a VR League Discord that people can join and find out what games are going to play that season. We do different marketing through social media and websites and articles. But to be quite honest, most of the players for teams come from the games themselves. So a lot of the games, one of the things that we've been encouraging, we do it now through Onward, which is a game from Dante Buckley, Downpour Interactive. He was a young man in college who dropped out of college to make the VR game. And it's the most popular first-person shooter right now, and it's actually in VR League Season 3. And then the same thing with Echo Arena. We have the same program, but that's from Ready at Dawn. What we do is we have things called boot camps. And so we go in and train new players. And the VR community, as you guys know, is still small. We're growing, but one of the things we've tried to establish early on is that VR is about the people involved, because it's not like a flat game where you can just ignore that screen or that chat message. When you're in VR, you've got somebody right next to you, and you see their body language. And you know, there's a lot more humanity in virtual reality than there ever has been involved with the internet. There really is. And so if you see this person come into your lobby and they're kind of looking around, even though you can't see their face, you see their body language that they are totally clueless. And so you go over and you say, you know, hi, welcome to the game. Can I help you? Can I teach you how to use this gun or this disc or this ball or whatever it is? And so that's really how we're getting teams and building up the league as well, is we're focusing on community involvement and really being helpful. And so we go to those players, welcome them, and then we give them boot camps and training and lessons and teach them up, and then say, all right, now you might fit well with this team, where they find players that they like and say, I like these people, and they form the teams that way. So it's really all about community involvement from the ground up.
Yeah, community is obviously a really big word in traditional esports, so that's great that you're kind of using that as well. I'm just wondering about the boot camp. How old do you have to be?
We take all ages.
Really? Okay. My 8-year-old needs to win 50K.
You do have to be 13 to be in the league, though.
Oh, okay. So just going back to the publishers, Echo Arena, Onward, how are the publishers supporting the VR esports ecosystem with the hardware companies such as you, Angelo? I mean, obviously I know that you're supporting Virtual Athletic League, but are there any other games that you're specifically supporting or want to see out there? If you can talk a little bit about your involvement.
So I can't talk about everything that the business unit's doing, right? But we have a sponsorship.
Why not?
We have sponsorship teams, right? In
Right.
Berlin and other places, and we've worked with publishers. And I think certain publishers are more open to working, right? And some publishers want to have a more closed system, right? So we're working with people in various guises and forms, and want to work with everyone kind of throughout the value chain in terms of like, this is an important growing area for us. We see this huge kind of tailwinds pushing us all forward. You know, how many hundreds of millions or billions of hours are spent, right? Watching esports, much less playing it, right? So it's like a great opportunity, and it's just kind of a question of, you know, when is it going to develop? Where can I make money? And like, who's going to be able to make money, you know, in the next, you know, not 10, 20 years, but in the next 5 years, right? So there's lots of experimentation, right? Sandbox has got all this money, right? They're going to be able to kind of play and experiment.
So they don't need your money.
But I think one of the interesting things about VR is, and you know, Sonya being case in point, is that VR is not attracting the, you know, the superstars from flat gaming. VR is growing players from the ground up. People like me, you couldn't, I can't play a flat game to save my life, literally or figuratively. It's terrible. But you put me in a VR headset and I have my body to work with, I mean, gloves off. It's a whole different experience for me. And I've been a technologist from, you know, lemonade stand on the, Apple IIe back in the day. It was a, screaming great at little brick out. I mean, that just tells you my age. Sorry, but these games have been around for a very, very long time. But for people like me, flat gaming just, I just couldn't get myself there. But I'm seeing people that so we're growing these leagues. And when I first started talking to ESL and Oculus about how we were going to even name the VR Challenger League, we called it the VR Challenger League because we didn't want to be taken as at the same level as the other esports. It was very, very deliberate by saying that, okay, we are the beginning leagues and the amateur leagues, and we want to graduate kind of to the collegiate leagues before we can get to the pro leagues. And we're still in that process. And we've taken some step backs and some step forwards, but we're still really are in that. If you look at a traditional baseball team and the AAA, AA, construct, or even the collegiate construct where you have, junior varsity and varsity, those things apply. I mean, we've got to really focus on player development in a big way, whether that comes through, a grassroots level through LBE. I think LBE is vital because a lot of these potential talent players may or may not have access to the equipment that they need. Yep. So getting them into an LBE and having those LBEs ladder up into giving them the opportunity to actually even potentially win their own equipment or, win the money that can take them to where
That's
they
a good idea, Angelo.
Noted.
He's making notes. I'll give you a note later. But this is really important, and as a community, and I feel like sometimes brands, and I can say this now being independent, hopefully I don't get a letter later, but from a brand perspective, I think there's a rush to the money on the product sales, the consumer electronics side a lot of the times. If we take a look back at how long it's taken esports to get to where it's at, it was 14 years ago, it was LAN parties in people's garages, if you were lucky to even have a garage that was networked, right? And then it moved to the cafeterias, and then, that process, we need to give VR the chance to grow in that way instead of, I think we're rushing to the money, and this is for the industry overall, but it's about good content. It really is about good content at the end of the day. And if we're not focused on where we need to be, and we don't have people that believe and can understand the process that it takes for the adoption of this technology, it's going to be hard. We're going to get there, but it's going to be tough. But the breaking up or the carving up of the map at this point in time that I see happening in a lot of different areas, trying to create religious camps around certain approaches. It's everything, guys. We have to do everything all together and support each other because listen, there's plenty to go around, and it's not one thing. It's not, Janelle will tell you, it's not just what she's doing. Everybody else has to be there do what they're doing. We've got to have the analytics. We've got to have the players. We've got to have the places. We've got to have the equipment. We have an encouraging community. We do see a lot of the bullying activities
into
the VR space. We have to stand up as a community and say, take your trash somewhere else, because we need this to be, especially with the humanness that's involved with it. It's not just be the words any longer. So these things we have to stand up as a community to actually support. But there's plenty of money to go around, folks. Let's stop trying to carve up the board so soon.
So great. So I actually wanted to kind of go back to traditional esports for a minute. Obviously, Oliver, I'd like to know first of all, were you a Dota fan before?
No, I was an classic Unreal Tournament player.
Okay.
When I did LAN parties, I went through a little bit of Counter-Strike 1.5, and then got out when Source turned up because trash. But traditional esports, and I think this has been talked about quite a lot already, you don't have a connection so much with the players. As was said earlier, you get the sitting down at the computers at the start of the, you get the reaction shot when they lose, but you don't have so much of a personal connection. They're just a screen name, which if you're used to gaming at home is fine. And you coming from that end of the spectrum, I'm quite comfortable with connecting with a screen name rather than a human that you might meet at a LAN party once a year. But the change in how that's going to be approached with the increased physicality is probably a good way to describe it of the players means that I think you become a little bit more invested. I don't care about screen names really, but I care about Formula One drivers because you get to see them doing a job. You get to see them performing or failing. Whereas if you just see a character get killed, it looks the same as if the character gets killed anyway. It's a standardized animation. Whereas in VR, you get a bit more of the humanity back. And as a medium in general, I think that the immersive technologies enable not storytelling anymore. I like to talk about story living. Just because it's not something that you're being told, it's not something you're being shown, you gain a little bit more, agency is possibly the wrong word, but connection with the environment and what's going on. It's not something that you're just kind of poking and prodding, it's something you're doing.
I mean, does anyone, for example, Janelle, when you were building your game, did you look at traditional kind of games that are used in esports competition as to why they are so successful?
I mean, so the vision for VRcade Power Play was born out of the original founding team of VRstudios. And so this is, you know, back 7-8 years ago. So that original founding team were huge esports folks. So everything came out of the foundation of that. And then, so taking the foundation, and then, but how do we enhance that? How do we, you know, again, take it to a very different level of super intense, actual competitive physical play with everybody, you know, in the same space together. So absolutely.
So I actually did obviously the conference with Microsoft, and we had some people there from Asia. But Angelo, what are you seeing in terms of what's going on in Asia with esports and for VR?
I think it's going to, you know, continue to lead and be a place where we can kind of look to and learn from. I mean, it's a different market. Not all of it's going to be applicable to us, right? Everyone's going to be out of home and stuff. But, you know, we've got the Quest, right? I've only played with it for a couple of hours, right? Super excited what that's going to mean. We've got the content. I think there's lots of opportunities, you know, all over the world. And it's not just in the US or Europe and whatnot.
I mean, do you see with the Quest, for example, people going, instead of going to like arcades, they may go and just, you know, hire a basketball court and do their own thing? I mean, how do you see that working out?
So I think LBEs are wonderful, right? But it's still going to be $1.
Don't you have a better headset coming out, by the way, than the Quest? I'm kidding.
You didn't like the reverb? Come on.
I do like the reverb.
It's been like 3 weeks. We're going to continue to develop hardware that's going to, I think, continue to amaze, right? It's not going to just be backpacks and headsets and whatnot. I think the Quest is going to be great. LBEs, right? It's expensive for people, right? So I think having like LBEs at the high end, having a Virtuix system at the high end is like amazing. I think having a Quest, having a Go, like I think it's like wonderful that people are going to have all these choices to do it, and it's just like, hey, I want something cheap and quick. Hey, I want the Friday night experience. Hey, I want to like go with like my friends to the whatever party and like just have this like amazing experience and just like get all sweaty and just be like, like I'm gonna remember this for like a year.
I don't think LBE I don't think you can say it's expensive. I think actually LBE is very, I mean, it depends how everybody like does pricing of it, but LBE is quite reasonable and is very much a lot of times people's first entrance into VR, and is actually a powerful partner to consumer VR as well. So this allows people to you know, experience VR on a very large scale way, in a very exciting way, in a very social way with a lot of folks. And yeah, and the costs are, I mean, frankly, you know, with a lot of our customers, a lot of our partners, the costs are extraordinarily reasonable. So it's very cheap to be able to experience something so fantastic and cool.
It's definitely cheap compared to buying a PC and a headset.
Absolutely.
Like, I think that's probably why things like the PlayStation VR have done so well, because it increases the utility of something you already own. Unless you're a high-end PC gamer, you don't have a VR-capable machine. And then if you're expected to spend anywhere from sort of $350 to $1,000 on a headset, that's a lot of money for people. That could easily like add 50% to their PC build budget. Whereas an LBE, although compared to other forms of entertainment that you can go and do, bowling for instance, it might be more expensive than bowling or going to the cinema, but you get access to something that is otherwise so prohibitively expensive. It's not like playing soccer where all you need is a ball. To do
I would
high-end
argue with
VR.
you that I'm going to create a little conflict right now because when you're in competitive sports in general, like playing
That's-
soccer, it is very
It
expensive.
gets very expensive.
My daughter rides horses and she competes at the national level. I mean, I wish she was a VR gamer and I would buy her however many PCs that she would want, right? I think people will pay what they will pay for the experience. But I do think as we look at the spectrum of how we do player development in particular, having easy access in your neighborhood to your friend's house to an LBE, I think is very, very important. And that's important in every single sport. So if we really change our mindset and we think about this as a sport, we think about the development of the sport from the very beginning. I mean, kids that become professional soccer players, the amount of money their parents spent to get them there is a lot. Kids who become professional drivers, that's where I think VR is going to be great to develop race car drivers. We've already seen some very, very big success stories where kids get taken out of a VR game and put on the racetrack at Le Mans and they win the race.
So this on GT Academy is fantastic.
Exactly. So these are the sorts of the things. I think we just need to shift our mindset. I think we spend way too much time worrying about consumer electronics and not enough time worrying about players and experiences. I mean, I always use the example of HDTV. I mean, at some point in time, when the content was there, you didn't care how much your HDTV was, you went and bought one, right? But that's the experiences have got to measure up, and it's gonna be up to all of us to make sure that people have the access through LBE if they're not at the point where they can invest in the equipment themselves. And this topic is about esports, not about in general, distribution of VR or this technology. This is about player development, league development. How are we going to get our athletes from where they are today? Where are the talents? How are we going to find them? How are we going to support them on their journey? And it's all the things that we've talked about, easy access to some of maybe the lower end experiences to get your, learn the hand-eye coordination, getting into a facility that's going to actually encourage you for that sport, and then, getting sponsors and getting leagues. I mean, that's it all has to happen.
Louisa, can I add something there real quick?
Yeah.
I think it's real important, the statement you made that and if you remember one thing, we have to start thinking about this as a real sport. That's very essential to the point that we're making here. And I'm gonna go back for just a second to what he said about flat gaming and comparing it to now, how you have real players in the games. You are in the game in VR. It's very different. So yes, we are bringing the humanity back, which is great. When you bring humanity back, that brings a lot of joys and also brings some problems. And so it's important to treat this as a real sport from the beginning because it's very different from traditional gaming in this aspect that we do not want this culture growing up to be toxic. And we want people to want to be in that environment. It's different in the way that if you were to go to, I always use this example, if you go to the grocery store, if you were to go to a grocery store, you wouldn't shop at a grocery store where somebody's there constantly harassing you, hitting you in the head, stealing your money, taking your groceries, and being a total jerk to you. You don't want to be in that grocery store. You're gonna go to one where, people say hi, they may leave you alone, but either way, nobody's stealing your food, taking your money, and treating you badly. And so, you want to shop at that grocery store. So it's the same thing with VR right now. I think it's very important that we realize virtual reality is immersive, totally immersive. You're in that environment. So new users, and I can speak to this very well because I never used technology. I never did flat gaming. I never, had been in these kind of things. When I put on that headset, I was in the environment. And so we need to make sure that everybody understands from the lowest level of players who've never tried before, all the way up through the sponsors, developers, everybody, that when we create experiences, yes, you do want to think about safeties and things like that. There are some of those being developed. But more importantly, we need to think of it as a sport. If I were to go to a basketball game and run out on the court, they're going to eject me. If I'm a player and I start hitting another player or treating them badly or whatever, they're going to give me a technical. So, I personally think that will help us grow as a professional organization, professional industry, because we need to make sure that esports is seen as V-sports. It's a virtual sport, but it's still a sport most importantly. So that's an important point to make.
Well, that's a question though. Are there guidelines out there about how community should treat each other? And if not, I kind of see it that something HP could sponsor with Sonya and Lisa heading it.
I mean, traditional sports, you have kind of referees there, right? I think a lot of esports are going to not have the official paid referee to kind of like enforce good behavior.
Yet.
Please.
Well, actually, I was just going to say, so actually for LBE, you have the operators and the shoutcasters. So the operators are there to ensure that, you know, there is good competitive, nice play, that nothing is getting out of hand, to regulate the games. So absolutely, and there's lots of training that we do that goes on with our partners, with our customers, with their operational staff. So that is super buttoned down, super regulated. But also within the development of the experience itself, and this has something to do with things like, oh, how are people treating each other, but skill level and player profiles. So one of the things, you know, we were seeing is that, you know, younger kids would come in with some older kids, and the older kids would just completely obliterate them in the game, and the younger kids were getting frustrated, they weren't having a great time. So some of the things that were important for us to build in the experience was, you know, things like rubber banding, different types of player profile settings. So, okay, you know what? Maybe these kids coming in are going to do casual play, or families are going to come in and they're going to do casual play, and then these other types of skill level players are going to do hardcore or competitive play. And oh, now a tournament is being run. Okay, so that's going to be done on competitive play setting, so that, you know, everybody's having a really good time, everybody is matched up appropriately, there's no frustration, there's no like, I can't even come out of my base, like I'm getting, you know, headshots on me and obliterated constantly. So that's also very important within the experiences, that play balancing, the rubber banding, player profile settings.
Yeah, that's great. So I just wanted to ask, you know, to finish off, before we have any questions, what are your future plans this year, and what do you want to achieve at the end of 2019?
I want to find investment companies to invest in and
Sure,
partner
there's
with,
quite a few of those.
Hopefully at the end of the year we'll announce them.
Fabulous.
We have some more exciting rollouts of Power Play, so that's very exciting to us to kind of see that game and that community expand. Also, we have a lot of people coming to us with specific, so this goes beyond even just sort of sport-oriented, people coming with different types of IP to brand Power Play. And in fact, I can't say what it is right now. It's going to be announced in the next month or so. But one of the most highly coveted video game IP is being used to brand and re-theme Power Play with this video game IP, and it's going to be part of a major traveling show.
So I'm getting my sea legs, as you know, relative to kind of being out on my own. So one of the things I'm super passionate about is the development stage across the industry. You know, in the esports space, partnering with, you know, key leaders, a lot of whom are here at the table, and trying to bring perspective and support as far as, you know, how are we going to build this thing? How are we going to build this thing from the ground up in the right way? So that's my main goal, is very much focused on independence and mid-range studios that are really looking to differentiate themselves and wanting to do something unique, but that are interested in being a part of the community as a whole. So those are the things that are, you know, my top priorities, you know, for this year.
So basically, I am looking for opportunities to always help VR esports grow. I love virtual reality overall, but this is kind of my niche. I really enjoy it, and so I'm looking for ways to build the players, the leagues. I basically stole this shirt from Oculus, and I really am kind of volunteer, so I'm looking for ways to make money. So if anybody needs consulting help on VR esports, so my husband will be very happy that I'm not using all our savings to fly around the country to talk to you guys. So that would be helpful. And pretty much that's what I'm going to do anyway, because I love this. I want to see the industry grow, and I have an awesome husband, by the way. Shout out to him and my kids who are at home taking care of things while I'm gone. But I plan on just enjoying the year and seeing some tremendous growth in the industry. And if anybody needs anything, just let me know. I'd be glad to help.
From a Weaver perspective, we're looking forward to seeing the apps get released on platforms to members of the general public rather than just specifically at events. Seeing that go wider and seeing the challenges that will come with audience. I love a good technical challenge. From a Rewind point of view, hopefully by Christmas we should have launched our first competitive LBE title. Can't tell you what it is yet, but that's going to be another big challenge.
Great. So we have time for some questions, but I can't see anyone. So do we have any questions in the audience?
Yes, 2 minutes, please.
Okay. Should I?
I'm wondering if you guys could talk a little bit about LBE venues of the future. How do you envision gaming venues looking like physically in the future? My company is about to break ground on a 6,000-seat live venue, live music venue that also does esports. And I know there's been more of a flat gaming kind of mentality on the side of our sponsors and our C-suite.
Yeah, we should
Physical
talk
space evolving over the next few years.
actually, because I have something that was already mapped out for around 7,000 seats. So, you know, catch me afterwards and I'll talk to you about that. There's lots of different ways to do it, to be quite honest, as I'm sure you're working out with the seating areas. And, you know, but there isn't that much difference between doing traditional esports, sports, and concerts. You know, a lot of kind of like ESL 1 is held at the arena in Birmingham, and that is, you know, for example, the, you know, one of the biggest arenas there that's around 8,000 seats, I believe.
Do you anticipate players are eventually going to need more space as they need to physically move around more?
Yeah, it depends on the game.
Yeah, it will depend on the game.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
what Janelle's doing is you know, full body. I guess for people that haven't done it, probably the closest thing that you may have done is maybe laser tag or something along those lines where you're physically running around a space. So that's from an observation perspective, I mean, you're very much more, even from a seating, right? You're going to be much more, you know, wanting to be able to look down, maybe theater in the round kind of scenario. You know, your camera working, your projection has to be a little bit different in that scenario versus in an Echo Arena where it's fine to have a you know, concert stage kind of view because each of your players, one team here, one team there, and they've kind of got their little space that they stay in. They are not, they are fairly stationary as far as their footwork is concerned. Maybe they have like a 6x6 or 10x10 kind of place that they roam around. She's got a completely different, you know, scenario, more of a basketball court kind of a scenario.
Yeah, I was just going to say, so typically our customers tend to be family entertainment centers. So if you go into like a Dave & Buster's or like a rec room or a Palladium or things like, we have cruise ships that are, so arenas on top of the cruise ships where it used to be basketball courts.
Right.
Theaters, where they've taken a whole auditorium and converted that to an arena, theme parks as well, and casinos too.
I think you have to think about theater and traditional court sports, you know, depending, again, it depends on the game.
Mm-hmm.
But again, we encourage you not to throw out the baby with the bathwater. I mean, people have been doing, you know, sport viewing since the gladiators, for Christ's sake. I mean, this is not new. So
Yeah.
just because there's technology involved and your headset involved, don't throw out all what you
Right.
know about sports and, you know, putting on productions.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone, and thanks for listening, and thank you to the amazing panel.